The dream team there has worked hard. Shout out to Keith. Thank you. And so the registration links are now live for that. So those links are there. And what we're going to talk about in the learning classes. So it's a 2-hour learning lecture, which is one of the worst ways to learn. So you're welcome. Anywho, one of the least effective ways to get information to someone is by lecturing. Yeah! So I'm going to do a lecture on learning. So that's amazing. Amazing. You're welcome. And this is a How We Learn 101 with a very strong emphasis on the things that, once we know these things about learning, they change the way we teach. So a very strong emphasis. And I think what you may find, if you are doing this class, if you decide to do this class, I think what you may find is that you'll feel quite validated, I think. So this happens quite a lot in the work that I do, where I'm talking about X, Y, Z, and here's why we do X, Y, Z, and like here are all of the reasons, blah blah blah. And people go, oh, that's why that works. Oh, good. I'm glad. I thought I was just some weirdo out here, like trying to, do this thing. And I was like, I thought I maybe discovered like some really, thing that no one else knew. And I was a little afraid to talk about it because, yikes, no one else is doing this, or no one else seems to be doing this. And then here we go. Yes, that's why that works. There's science. There's actual science. So this is not, some of you will know that I love the work that Heidi Moss does, especially just where taking the neuroscience and like applying to how we teach, and this is not that. If you want that, go talk to Heidi, right? Go do her stuff. This is the like 101 of that, right? This is the like, here's like, anyway. So that's what I'm doing, and then later that afternoon, same day, then we're going to, Cindy Dewey is going to come in, and we'll do a panel with Cindy Dewey, which is a better way to learn, a more effective way to learn, more give and take, with all of the practical application to the voice studio, especially as it concerns to motor skills, acquiring motor skills, which is what teaching is, or singing is, a motor skill. So here we go. Today, in anticipation of that, I put up a post a couple of days back talking about teaching goals, or voice teaching goals, because I'm talking about voice teaching, right? So talking about voice teaching goals. And in that post, I've worked with a lot of voice teachers, and in that post I talked about some of the sort of admirable goals, the things that we say are the reasons that we're teaching, or the goals that we want for our students as we're teaching. So in that post, let me just call it up here. Yes, so one of the goals that I hear lots and lots and lots is to prepare singers for a career. So I've got, this is perhaps a little bit more prevalent in academic programs than it may be in independent voice studios, depending on the makeup of your studio, of course, but this may be a little bit more prevalent in that setting, where folks are doing degrees or certifications, et cetera, in singing and performance arts in order to, because they want to have a career. So then the teacher then takes that on as a goal to prepare the singers for a career. Another one is to teach singers technique that leads to more efficient singing. In some cases, we might say healthy singing. I'm not entirely sure that healthy is the greatest way to describe it. Sustainable might be a better way to describe that, or efficient, et cetera. So that can become a goal as well for voice teachers, where we're like, yes, the whole reason I'm doing this is because there are so many voice teachers out there who, aren't doing it right, and so then, not right, but there are so many voice teachers out there, singers out there who come out of studios where they don't have efficient technique, and they're doing unhealthy singing and all that stuff. So that can be a goal. Another goal can be to ensure that they are just simply better singers than when they started, right? So all of these are relatively admirable goals, right? We say like, these are all goals that I have in my teaching. And I'm here to tell you that these 3 goals, if we have these kinds of things at the forefront of our teaching as a goal, we may actually have less effective teaching than we want, and that may actually, when those are forefront in our mind, to prepare singers for a career, to teach them technique that leads to more efficient or sustainable singing, to ensure that they are better singers than when they started, these kinds of goals can actually lead to not as deep learning in the voice studio. Because, and someone posted, a couple of people posted too on that post, well, these are good goals. Oh, sorry. And because, and what I offered instead, let me get to that. Let me do that. So what I offer instead, or what I offer as a more sustainable, if you will, goal is this, that our teaching goal is to support student learning and agency. And once we do that, then, if our goal is to actually support student learning and to support student agency, to support student self-learning and to support student agency in the voice studio, once we do that, those other goals then are outcomes. So someone said to me, or someone asked on the post something about, let me just see what the comment was. I don't see, so I don't get how these are in conflict unless the implication is that goals 1 to 3 don't take client desires and goals in mind. So yes, that is one main reason that those are in conflict is that goals 1 to 3 can override what the student wants, right? So yes, but it's not so much that they're in conflict, it's that they're different things altogether. So those 3 things, to prepare singers for a career, to teach technique that leads to more efficient singing, to ensure that they are better singers than when they started. First of all, those are all like externally, if we externally impose them without talking to the singer about them and without consulting with the singer about them, then yes, they're really going to lead to not efficient teaching, right? They're really going to lead to not as great learning as they could. But it isn't so much that they're in conflict, it's that those 3 goals are in fact outcomes. Those are actually learning outcomes. So being prepared for a career that you want, that is a learning outcome. Having more efficient singing technique that is sustainable, that allows you to communicate in the way you want to communicate, that gives you the ability to do the things you want to do with your voice, that's an outcome. To ensure that so being a better singer than when they started, first of all, we want to make sure that the better part is what the singer wants, right? So that the better, we're not imposing what better means, right? That the better is how the singer wants to sound, that they are singing better by their estimation, not by ours necessarily, or in conjunction with us, right? We want to ensure that the better singing is not entirely from us as voice teachers, or not imposed from, the parameters aren't imposed entirely from us. But them being a better singer by their standard, by their own standard, that is an outcome. That's not a goal, right? That's not a teaching goal. That's an outcome of our teaching. So what happens, and I said in the copy there too, we tend to get it so turned around, where we tend to think about our teaching goals as what we want to do for or instill in the singer, what we want to pass on, what we think the singers need to know, what we consider to be good technique or healthy singing or engaging performing, right? So we want to pass all of those things on. But those things, the outcome of what singers know, how they sing, what they do with their career, all of those things, those are outcomes. So then, when we, hi, thanks, Liz Jackson, I love you. Those are all outcomes of the goals, right? So the reason I'm saying we get this mixed up, or we get this turned around with the best of intentions. We have the best of intentions. I mean, it is an admirable intention that the singer you're working with should be singing better, I'm going to put all that in big quotes, of course, that should be singing better than when they came in. That is an admirable goal or intention, but it's not actually a goal. It's an outcome. What? So when we, Christy says, I'm loving that you're addressing student ownership and agency. I've noticed in several instances teachers actually discouraging agency with a just trust me kind of attitude. Do you think this comes from a place of ego or an honest, although misplaced, harmful, good intention? I'm personally dispirits actually a lazier approach. Oh, I'm not quite getting what you're saying there, but yes, I just like just write a book of you just if you just want to be heard, right? Yeah, I love that. So yeah, I mean, when we as teachers have our goal that the singer is going to sing better, or that we're going to prepare them for a career, or we're going to make sure they have good technique, whatever that means, right? Oh, actually suspicious, yeah. I hear you, Krista, yeah. I hear what you mean now. When we have that as a goal, that then may lead to, not always, of course, there are always caveats, exceptions, et cetera, but that can tend to lead to a just trust me kind of attitude, right? It absolutely, yes, is a big part of, is exactly, the just trust me, big part of transformational teaching. Do you mean transactional teaching, Liz? I think you mean, but anyway, it's not about me as the teacher, right? So that can lead to me saying, just trust me because I know how to get you to where you're prepared for the career. I know how to I know how to get you to this better technique. I know how to get you to X, Y, Z, right? And it also becomes a just trust me because I'm going to set the goals for you. And then not only am I going to set the goals for you, I'm going to set that, right? So what happens in our teaching when instead of thinking about these things as goals in our teaching, we think about them as outcomes? That changes our goals. So we think, okay, the outcome, as we talk with the singers that we work with about what their outcome, yes, exactly, Liz, yes, just trust me can show up when the teacher isn't able to see and respond to resistance from the student, right, exactly, right? So we see resistance from the student exactly to what we're doing, and we go like, rather than sort of responding and saying in a transformational teaching kind of way, TM Liz Jackson Hearns, rather than being able to respond and say like, let's unpack that, let's figure out where we can go with this, we shut down, right? We shut down the agency, yeah. What is today's topic, please? We're talking about student agency. We're talking about goals and outcomes in the voice studio. Talking about goals and learning outcomes. So when we are working with the singer to discover their why, as I've talked about lots and lots, as we're asking why, discover their why, as Liz Jackson Hearns says, as we drill down on their so they come in and they say, I want to be a better singer, and we say, so that? And so often it comes down to because I'm not able to say the things I want to say right now in the way that I want to say them. And I'm not able to use my voice, capital V. I'm not able to use my voice, capital V, in the way that I want to use it. And so I'm here to understand how to use my voice, capital V. And this goes to you're so welcome. This goes to for folks who are going into careers in performing as well, right? Like this is all of us. Very often the reason I'm here is because I want to learn how to use my voice in the way that I can then express my voice, capital V. So we get into this, once we have this kind of dialogue going with the singers we're working with, once we have this conversation and we're starting to co-create outcomes. So we're starting to, depending on the student's level of agency already, depending on the student's level, when the singers come into studios, I've talked about this before, singers are going to be at various levels of self-discovery, various levels of self-agency, of agency with their voice. They're going to be at various levels of, self-learning, self-directed learning. They're going to be at all of these different levels of being able, right, awareness of their own learning process, etc. So we may do a little bit of directing within that process to figure out, to help them, to support them as they're figuring out what they actually do want and what their so that's are, what their deep why is. So we may need to do a little bit of supporting in that process. But once we're in that process, then we start to develop outcomes. And some singers will be in the studio with a very clear outcome already in mind, right? Very clear. This is what I want to do. This is a blah, 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 right? So then our goal as voice teachers is built on what's going to be the outcome. So this is when I started to talk to folks and read and, understand the idea of backward design, which is pretty, which is an educational philosophy and way of teaching for classroom essentially. But when I started to think about that, part of the reason that I loved the idea of backward design and did a whole presentation on it with Gabriela, Farias, and Sara, Campbell for the NATS conference back in July, is that when I started to look at that, I was like, okay, so there is actually already a structure out there to kind of that in the teaching and pedagogy world that understands this and moves us away from this sort of goal-oriented teaching into creating the goals from the outcomes and understanding what are outcomes and what are goals. So then our goal becomes, how do I support the singer in agency in finding what they already know within themselves and on their self-learning journey? How do I support the singer on their self-learning journey in such a way that the outcome is that they are prepared for the career that they want? The outcome is that they have the technique, the sustainable, if you will, technique to create the sounds that they want to create, to be able to say the things they want to say. That the outcome is that they are better singers once they leave the studio than they were when they came in, by their standards. Not necessarily by mine, by their standards. Or a co-created outcome of what better singing means. So we have this, this becomes, and Liz is going to write a book on this becomes transformational teaching, right? This becomes teaching where I'm not in charge of all of the things. And this leads us to so much ease in the voice studio. It can be a little scary at first, so it can be a little bit, weird or whatever at first, but this leads to you not having to work as hard, I promise you. This also leads to you not having to know all the things. You don't have to be able to diagnose all the things. You don't have to know all the things. You don't have to understand formants. You don't have to know all the things. You absolutely don't. You can be a wonderful teacher of all the things, well, of many of the things. We're not all going to be able to teach all the things, of course, but, all that stuff. But you can be a wonderful teacher to all of the singers you work with or who come into your orbit if your goal is to support learners in their learning process, leading to the outcome that they get the things they want. And they become better learners, right? Which is then sustainable throughout. I'd love some examples of the language used with students to help them understand the dynamic of teacher support on their journey rather than keeping them strapped in on your journey for them. Yeah, Christy, exactly. So I don't know if you came in at the beginning here or at the beginning where we're going to definitely unpack this a lot more in the learning class, the how we learn and then how we teach classes in December. So, there will be a lot of practical application for that. But what does this look like in the voice studio? So this looks like when we're doing intake forms, we're asking questions like so that, right? And again, learners don't always know what their so that is and what their why is, and so that may be a discovery journey along the way. But so that's the first sort of thing, is that we're working toward supporting singers. So when they say, I want to be a better singer, you say, so that? Where do you see yourself singing and using your voice? What's different when you use your voice after having voice lessons for 6 months? What's different in the way that you use your voice? How do you see that different now? Or what do you see changing? And Liz, so true. Sometimes they've never even been asked, what do you want? Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they've never even been asked that. They've never even given that opportunity. So this also looks like when we're giving feedback in the voice studio, we don't give feedback. I mean, we do, especially if they're at the beginning of their learning journey, but we don't give feedback. We say things like, how was that for you? How did you experience that? What changed for you? We say things, when we give directives, we don't give directives. We find ways to, so for example, the directive, and let me say too, that the more I get in a room with Heidi Moss and talk about like the neuroscience and like the way we learn, like, and how motor skills are developed and what the brain does, the more I get into a room with her, the more I'm like, so that's why that works. Okay, that's interesting. Because I'm coming to this teaching thing from like a teaching philosophical agency, support student learning, self-directed learning, student-led learning, et cetera, right? The discovery is the best kind of learning, exploratory learning, all that kind of stuff. I'm coming from that sort of philosophical way and being like, oh yeah, this seems to work really well. And then Heidi's like, oh, and here's why, because the brain responds X, Y, Z. Like, oh, turns out we're like neurologically wired for this kind of learning. So turns out it's amazing. Business says, I've told my singers that lessons are guided self-exploration or self-discovery. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Guided self-exploration, guided self-discovery, exactly. So I got a little distracted there, but one of the things that we can do is we can say, rather than giving a directive, so an example of a directive might be like, sing it with a more fronted tongue, right? So we say, sing it with a more fronted tongue. Okay, that's what you want to happen physically in the body. You as the voice teacher, you've done a great job of diagnosing what's going on, and you're like, okay, so we need to have a brighter sound, and it needs to be, I don't know, whatever. It needs to be more in the mask, whatever. And so we need to have like a more fronted tongue. Okay, how can I say the thing without actually saying the thing? How can I get them to do the thing without actually doing the thing? So we say things like, know thyself applies for singing. Yeah, it sure does. So we say something like, in this repertoire that you're singing, blah, 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 we're going to do this action. So we got this, and you're going to do it with me. Okay, so now I ask, how did that feel for you? They got their tongue fronted because what? And I never asked them to front their tongue, right? I never asked them to do the thing. All I did was like, guide, discover, and then they discovered something, and then they say to me, oh, well, it really felt like my tongue was like really far forward in my mouth, and I go, okay, that's terrific. That is an example of, here we have the agency. Now that's a really practical example, right? But that, if my goal is that they become a better singer versus I know that they're going to become a better singer for what they, in their own estimation, if I can guide their learning, then that changes from me saying, all you have to do is front the tongue. All you have to do is front the tongue. Can you sing it, please sing it as if it's an E vowel or whatever. That changes me from doing that to like, ooh, how can we discover fronting the tongue? And then they discover fronting the tongue, and then you say, hey, how does it feel? Do you like the tonal outcome? They might not like the tonal outcome. Okay, you don't love that tonal outcome? All right. What does your body want to do in order to create a different kind of tonal outcome? Let's do that. So that takes away from you having to do all of the diagnosis, all of the work, blah, blah, blah. The other thing that I talk about with teachers about is how would your teaching change if the singer already knew all the things? Yes, exactly, Christy. So I'll come back to that question in just a second. How would your teaching change if you believed that the singer you're working with already had everything they needed in order to do the thing? You wouldn't have to solve problems at all, right? You wouldn't have to solve any problems, would you? So they sing through a thing, and there's this like one note that they always sing flat, or they always sing sharp, or it gets too squeezed, or it gets too yelly, or they, whatever, the vowel is off, or whatever the issue is there, or they lock up, or they go hard, whatever. Something inefficient happens in the singing. If I believe that the singer is on a learning self-discovery journey, a self-learning discovery journey, did I put all those words together right? I'm not sure. If I believe that, my job is no longer to solve that problem. My job is to guide them to learn how to do the thing. That's my job, right? To guide them to learning within themselves, and to guide them to finding the problem, the solution to the problem. I'm just going to say, put those in quotes, but to guide them to find the solution to the problem within themselves. That becomes my job, right? So then we say, what did you love about that singing? What did you not love about that singing? Where were the challenges? Okay, that's the challenge for you? Amazing. Where was the not challenge? What was easy? All right. Let's sing. What happens if you do what you did in the not challenging part where you already knew what you were doing, and you sang it in this part where it felt challenging? Those kinds of those are, as you model those tools and as you model that kind of you've got the information you already need within yourself, and I'm here guiding. As we model that, that becomes then, first of all, like I said, my job gets so much easier. So much easier. A lot less work. It's a little more vulnerable, and also this involves me trusting the student so much more, so much more. Yikes! Believing in them so much more. So yeah, Christy says, curveball, what if their instinct self-awareness is super off? Which happens all the time, right? I suppose back up into redefining and explaining what good feels like and sounds like, absolutely that can be a way. But this is the whole conundrum, isn't it, right? Where we have, especially if they're young singers, especially if they're singers who have been in systems their whole lives where they've been told that their instincts are wrong, or they've been told that they can't listen to their body, or they've been told that they, so many things have they been told, or they've been told that they can't want something, or they've been told that their feelings should not be felt, or they've been told that their body is only evil. and should not be felt. Like all of those things. What if we just have, learners who are just young, and they don't have any self-awareness yet or instincts yet? Yeah, absolutely. This happens all the time. In fact, the vast majority of folks that come into singing studios have, as Liz said, have never been asked, what do you want? What do you feel? Their body has, what they sense in their body has never been validated. Like they've never been validated in terms of yeah, that's okay, you're okay to feel that thing. So I know, broken heart, exactly right. So that is the journey. So that becomes our journey. That becomes our journey as teachers, right? And yeah, Kevin is saying this work is messier in the beginning, but much more functional in the long run. Exactly. A fixie approach may be more organized initially, but becomes so much more overwhelming. Kevin could not have said that more clearly myself. Exactly right. So it's so much more messier in the beginning. It is absolutely messy. And this is also where we come into the idea of long-term learning, in independent voice studios, with some exceptions, of course. We're working on a long-term scale, right? We're working over years, usually, often with singers. So this is a long-term process. If you're working with singers and you're having aha moments every single lesson, it is entirely possible that it's not great learning that's going on there. It's what Lynn Helding calls the masterclass syndrome. So where we're getting some like quick learning, which isn't always deep learning. And quick learning can be that externally imposed, right? Can be that externally imposed learning, which then is not deep learning because I didn't discover it myself. I didn't come to it myself. I didn't trust my own self. I didn't trust my own instincts. I didn't trust my own stuff. So yeah, the initial, that fixie fix approach can be, certainly it can look more organized. It can look more effective. It can be quite, satisfying, especially at the beginning. It can be quite, especially for, singers who have been taught that they're not allowed to want anything, and so they get to want to have it quick. They get to want to be fixed. They get to come into lessons because they have problems that need to be solved, or technique issues that need to be fixed. So then we have this dynamic in the voice studio where I'm going to fix all the things, and that's eventually that's it can be effective. It can be effective, but it's not that deep work that we may want to do in the voice studio, and it's not necessarily, like I said, it's not necessarily effective long-term work. But this kind of teaching, this kind of work can be very messy in the beginning because we're not just, it's very rare that you start with a singer, where you're working with a singer, where they already have self-understanding, right? Where they already have agency around their voice, where they already have, where they're already using their voice in the way they want to use it. Or if that does happen, I'll say one thing. Let's story time. I worked with a wonderful professional singer who's in a band, who led a band, writes music and all that stuff, and has won a bunch of awards and all that stuff. Worked with a wonderful singer, and their parent had purchased them some lessons with me for Christmas or something like that as a gift, which is lovely. And this was before I was really understanding. This is before I was really putting these things into place and was intentionally working toward this, less externally goal-driven, less like I'm in charge and I know the thing and you don't know the thing. And especially in that kind of situation where you have a professional singer who is working with you, who's already doing really well, and they aren't coming to you because they have something in mind that they want to work on. They're coming to you because it was, someone else asked, right? Oh, Liz, thank you, Liz. Hopefully I'm saying the thing. And so this singer came in for voice lessons, and I think it was a set of 4 or maybe 6 lessons. And I spent those 4 to 6 lessons. I felt the pressure of of needing to deliver some fixes, right? Except that this person's singing didn't need to be fixed. There was nothing this person needed from me in the sense of like technique or skills or blah blah blah, right? There was nothing this person needed from me, and nothing, So this was well before I was really starting to. By about the 4th session, so I started off with what do you want, like how do you, and this poor singer was like, well, literally did not want anything, was not there because someone had, out of the goodness and kindness of their heart, had gifted them lessons, and they didn't necessarily think they needed them. And by about the 4th lesson, so I was like, okay, well, you know what? Sing some stuff. What's your most challenging rep? what's the stuff that, you wish that you could have more ease? And this singer had to work hard to figure out, like, well, like, they, I don't really need, I'm like, they don't really need, so by about the fourth lesson, I'm like trying to find things. Okay, well, what about the breathing here? Did you want to, like, y'all, singers are on this journey. We're all on this learning journey. Sorry, Liz, I don't know whether I got to what you were hoping for or not. But the singers are on this learning journey. So our job is our job in the voice studio, our goal is not to, oh good, okay, I'm not sure if I got there or not, is not to make them better singers, not to work with them for great technique, not to work with them to develop their career goals. Right? Yeah, Christy, I know. The fourth one, I'm like, I was struggling. Because this singer really didn't need voice lessons. I mean, we worked a little bit on some stuff, but oh, Liz, yes. But so resistant to the idea of gift cards, and Biz Mind says yes, Teacher Mind says nope. I know, because the age is like that was a whole thing there, right? Like this singer didn't have anything. They were already expressing themselves beautifully. They were well on their way to winning awards. Yeah. Oh, good. Oh, okay, Liz. Yeah. Terrific. Yeah, they were well on their way to winning awards. They were already expressing themselves beautifully. We did a couple of little articulation things that helped get a little bit more ease. We did a couple of little, like, consider this. The singer often plays guitar and sings at the same time. And so, like, consider these things around the instrument. But, like, did that singer really need it? Not really. Not really. I gave him a couple of warm-ups to consider. Whatever, Anyway. So yeah, when we get out of the I need to deliver a thing for this student and get into the how can I support this student in their learning, then those other things are outcomes. Those other things are learning outcomes. When the goal becomes, how do I support this student's learning? The outcomes that used to be goals, the things that used to be goals become outcomes. Yeah. I'll tell you, even, Liz, against my better judgment, I've had people who just want to, like, they just want to have, who've given guest, or what are they called, gift cards, to people, as a request. They're like, I can't think of anything to get, I want to get my husband, like, something he's always wanted to sing. And so I'd love to just, like, get him some lessons. Curious, was the student able to articulate how, if they were learning or growing at the moment? That's a good question. Let me come back to that, Christy. So I have, and I have always regretted it. Always regretted it. Gift cards, where someone is coming in because, so what do we do in the lesson? Basically, it becomes me, like, doing a fun little singing thing with you. It becomes a masterclass, right? It becomes a quick masterclass, just like a fun little singing thing where we have fun, and that's fine. But, like, you know what? Pay a singing not a coach. Pay a pianist. Take them out for karaoke. Do something fun with the voice, right? Like, I personally have always regretted it. And that is possibly because of the way that I want to teach and the way that I like to teach, where I like to have that long-term growth pattern. Or get them a set of, like, No, I don't do it. So curious, was the student able to articulate how or if they were learning or growing in the moment? I'm not sure that I asked that question, Christy, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if I actually asked that question. This is going back a ways now. I don't remember now whether I asked. I think that, yeah, I don't remember. This was 100% a singer who, a self-taught singer. I shouldn't even put that in quotes, but the reason I put that in quotes is because they're a self-learned singer. They're not self-taught, right? They're self-learned. They did all of the learning on their own, and they did it well. And the way they were using their voice was great for what they needed to do. And they weren't tiring. It wasn't a case of where they were coming out of gigs feeling like they weren't like they were too tired. It wasn't a case of like they weren't able to do the things they wanted to do, et cetera, right? It wasn't anything along those lines. So that was like, yeah, like, yeah. And then Seth says, when I was new to higher ed, working with the more experienced students was a great learning experience for me as it got me acclimated to the idea of co-grading with students. Yes. He doesn't know how lucky he was. Yeah. Well, he just didn't need it. He didn't need to work with me, right? And also that, like, anyway. Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing too. I think too, and maybe this has been your experience too, Seth. So very often, even in higher ed, the singers that we're working with often have never had this self-agency, have never experienced that kind of working. Even in higher ed, they haven't experienced that often. So even, yeah, even at that level, yeah, but not always. Okay. Ah, I'm so glad, Liz. That's amazing. Yeah, I've never loved that. I've always regretted when I've done gift cards, right? Yeah, always never been a great experience. And let me tell you, I am great on my feet. I am amazing in a first lesson. I am so good in a master class. I can do quick fixes like that, right? Like, you'll feel amazing when you have a lesson with me. I don't like it. You'll have a great time, but I don't like it. And part of that is because, yeah, good stuff to chew on. I'm glad. Some of the gift cards said they don't know why they're there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But yes. Anywho, okay. Something to consider, eh? Just something to think about. Ooh, my Canadian came through pretty strong right there. Something to consider, eh? Basically, like, just consider. Are the things that I consider to be goals, are they actually goals, or are they outcomes? And if they're outcomes, what are the actual goals? What should be my actual teaching goal? Okay. Have fun. See how that works for you. And if you are interested in kind of unpacking this a little bit more with a lot more practical application, come on out to the learning classes in December. Take care. See ya. Ending. And